How can you win as an AD carry in Season 11? How come Rekkless is in Challenger and I'm not? Well, to answer those questions, we need to figure out what Rekkless does that 99% of players don't do. What's up, GameLeap? Oh, the Chiz back at it, and by the end of today's special upload, you will know exactly what to do as an AD carry in order to play like a challenger. We're going to talk about openings, spacing, general positioning, trading, wave management, pretty much everything you need. Now, we are going to be watching gameplay from 4 of Rekkless's recent games, so let's get into it. Now, let's start by talking about level 1 and where you want to be before the minions get into lane. Now, this completely depends on the bot lane matchup. So in this game, Rekkless is playing Tristana with a Trundle against a Syndra and an Ornn. Now, this is real, by the way, but because Syndra is a mage, if you can ambush her at level 1 and get in her grill, you should always win as an AD carry. This is why Rekkless is not only standing so far up in the lane, so he's closer to Trundle when he goes in, but also why he's positioning close to these south brushes. This will push Syndra and Ornn towards the top side of the lane, and this is great because when they engage, Syndra and Ornn are kind of blocked by this wall, almost like they're trapped. Now, Syndra should flash, but because she doesn't, Rekkless flash auto-attacks himself to secure first blood. This is all set up though because Rekkless knows the level 1 matchup and adjusts his positioning accordingly. But what if you can't fight level 1 because the enemy bot lane is stronger? Well, let's look at this example. Rekkless is on Xayah with a Rakan against an Ezreal-Leona combo. Headbutting this enemy bot lane at level 1 is way more dangerous, so in order to try get an advantage, Rekkless has to do so via the minions. By auto-attacking and queuing the first few melees that get to lane, he is fighting for the push. This means he would hit level 2 before the enemy bot lane due to the minion advantage. But because Rakan does not help him and Leona helps the Ezreal, they lose the fight for level 2. So in this situation, Rekkless is just honest with himself. Alright, we didn't get the push, so I'm just going to back up and play safe. I want to keep as much HP as I can, and I don't want to give Leona any opportunity to send me back to base. Now, lots of AD carries in lower elos, because they don't get the push, will still contest the wave even though there is zero chance they secure that minion advantage, and will stay in range of the enemy threat. So what I'm saying is, don't give them a sniff. Now, in this next game, Rekkless is on Varus with a Nautilus against a Thresh and Kalista. Now, because Kalista is scary level 1 because of her rend, ambushing is not really an option. So Rekkless rightfully plays for the minions again and gives himself a much better chance of hitting level 2 first by auto-attacking the ranged minions a couple of times. This is something you can do when the enemy bot lane is not in the lane. It might be a little risky if they are actually there. Now, after last hitting these 3 melee minions, Rekkless focuses his attention onto the enemy AD carry because in terms of minions, Kalista still has to last hit these 2 melee minions to match the push. This is free damage for Rekkless, but notice how he doesn't overcommit. He fishes for an auto attack, that's right, but when Kalista is this far away, there is no point to run through the wave and risk anything. Cash in the chip damage and back off. Now, when Kalista and Thresh start auto attacking the wave together, Rekkless is in danger of losing the push, so he tries to match the enemy damage on the wave by auto attacking himself. And because they had the initial minion advantage when Kalista and Thresh arrived in lane, this makes sure that level 2 dream still comes true. Now, in the final game, Rekkless is on Vayne with a Jarvan support against a Jinx and Rel combo. Again, ambushing is never going to work with a level 1 J4, so getting the push is the priority. But because Jinx outranges Vayne, and because J4 is as useful as a wet paper bag, Rekkless simply has to concede the push and resorts to last hitting as safely as possible. But what does safely mean? Well, this has everything to do with your positioning, and the essential concept you have to understand is the diagonal line theory. If the enemy support stands towards the south side of the lane like this Rel, we stand towards the north side. If the enemy support stands towards the north side of the lane like this Thresh, we stand towards the south side. This equals safety equals less deaths. So many AD carries I've coached in lower levels of play will stand on the same side as the enemy blitzcrank and wonder why they get hooked. Now, the other essential concept to understand in terms of your positioning is your targeting. So whenever you trade in the bot lane like Rekkless does here, there is going to be a primary target, who is the most killable, and a secondary target. Now, the primary target is the easy part. You want to focus all your damage onto that particular champion, but taking into account the other enemy champion is what separates Rekkless to everyone else. Can you see how Rekkless jumps in below the Ornn hit? This is for 2 reasons. Ornn is the primary target, so we have to get in range to deal damage, but Rekkless is also maintaining a fairly safe gap to the Syndra. It's not like he's jumping into both of them. And even though Syndra pushes him away, because he jumped into such a reliable position, who cares? Now, if we skip forward in this game when Rekkless jumps in here to deal damage to the Jace, why not just jump straight into him? Well, that's because there's a secondary target, Ornn, and if he does headbutt both champions, there is a very high chance chance he gets blown up. So he jumps in a way so only Jace can retaliate and Ornn can't do anything, and this is an easy kill in the end. But remember, this is only apparent when the enemy champions have a threat. When they don't have a threat, you don't have to worry about where you fight from. So when Rekkless jumps directly on top of Gloin's head in this clip, he's jumping close to Syndra for sure, but she's out of mana, and there is nil threat. Now in this clip, Rekkless can obviously see the enemy Leona and Kindred in this brush. Now it would be suicide to run into them, of course, but he hovers just outside of that Leona E range to keep them interested, and this spacing is so important to take into account as well. The actual distance from you to the enemy champions. So when Leona does actually commit to this play, she can never jump on Rekkless because he is always just outside that Zenith Blade range. Okay, but what if you do misstep and get hit by that threat? Well, look at this. Rekkless is about to get hit by Leona's E, but because he is such a safe distance away from the second enemy champion, this being Ezreal, this engage doesn't even do anything. And because Camilla's here, they end up killing Leona for being way too keen. So again, your positioning relative to the enemy threats and then both enemy champions is crucial. Now let's go back to this Varus game. When Rekkless and Nautilus hit level 2 first, look where Rekkless auto-attacks the level 2 minion from. He kills it as close to Kalista and Thresh as possible, thereby giving him the best chance of fighting with the weaker level 1 opponents. This trick is essential to use if you want to become a great AD carry. But despite positioning aggressively with that advantage and hitting the level 1 Kalista, Rekkless forgets to flash this Thresh hook, and he trades his life with Kalista's. This is another influence in any lane you have to be aware of, the enemy cooldowns. So if we watch this again, Thresh has not used his death sentence at all. So if we ever commit to an all-in, trying to dodge or flash Thresh's Q is crucial, because we cannot deal damage for a second or two. So as soon as Thresh flings his scythe above his head, Rekkless should flash towards the primary target Kalista, and he would survive for sure. Now in this clip, we're going to pay attention to the enemy cooldowns. Syndra just used her E, meaning if Rekkless was to ever close that space, she would be in a lot of trouble, and this is exactly why Rekkless jumps in and wins that trade. So these cooldowns dictate your trade windows, and you have to pay attention to them. Same thing here. Syndra uses her E, Rekkless has no worries jumping in. But these cooldowns are not just important for when you initiate the trades, they are also important to consider when the enemy champions start the fight themselves. For example, the enemy Rel rides on top of J4's head and then ignites him. That's two massive cooldowns that have been used. So Rel now doesn't have them to stop Rekkless from dishing out the DPS, but lots of other AD carries might be so scared here, and I've seen it, they will still run away as if they were the one copying the engage. If you are ever the secondary target, go nuts. But as this lane continues, a good 10 seconds has passed, and Rel for sure has her W engaged back up, and the enemy bot lane is now level 2. This means that, because we never win a trade, Rekkless aligns himself with this tree of safety and towards the north side because Rel is in this south brush. You have to do everything well. And if you think this video is doing everything well, let the Jizzing code know by leaving a like down below. But sometimes when the enemy champion is on cooldown, we still might not want to go in. So when Syndra uses that all-important scatter of the weak onto Rekkless here, she's on cooldown. But look in the bottom left, Rekkless doesn't have his Q nor his E, so if he was to jump in, it's not a clear-cut win. If he had all his cooldowns, it's a no-brainer. So we also have to take into account our own cooldowns. Now the next influence we have to think about is the map and what it's telling us. So Rekkless and J4 see the enemy Nidalee at Gromp, and because the bot minion wave is about to crash into this tower, Rekkless knows for sure that he can get dived. So he backs off behind his J4, but that doesn't mean you AFK in terms of damage. If you go down fighting, which is why Rekkless concentrates his DPS on the enemy champion tanking the tower. This is a great way, as you can see, of trading kills. Hitting the Nidalee, for example, is pointless, and only when the numbers are in his favor does Rekkless run towards the enemy champions and he kills Nidalee at the end of this fight. If this was a gold AD carry, he probably runs into the Rel engage and gets one shot. But we can't talk about destroying the bot lane without talking about excellent wave management. In this Xayah game, after Rekkless clears these minions under his tower, this wave is pushing towards the enemy. But because Xayah and Rakan can't crash this wave into the enemy tower before the next wave comes into the lane, the only other option is to slow push. So many players are just going to auto attack the wave hit for no reason, and by doing this, you push that minion collision towards the enemy, so they are safer and you are less safe. And that means that the next wave has to travel further to stack. Exactly the same situation here. Rekkless clears the minions under his tower and he has two options. You slow push, aka you just last hit, or you hard push, aka auto attack and use your abilities on the wave. But Rekkless doesn't want to be in a riskier position than he has to be, so he simply last hits for the next few minion waves, but sometimes the enemy AD carry is going to thwart your plans. This Ezreal, for example, is trimming the stack Rekkless is creating, but it is still not time to hard push, simply because the next minion wave you can see just coming past the second tier tower, the enemy minion wave is in the same position and this will get in the lane before this current wave crashes. So again, just last hit, and it is only until this next wave gets into lane the Rekkless finally hard pushes. So when to time the hard push is a massive decision. Watch this clip. Kalista is in lane before Rekkless and is pushing a wave or two. do. Now, after killing these minions, she is going to have enough gold to buy a small item, but Rekkless doesn't want to stay in lane a small item behind. So whenever you want to recall to match the enemy's base, you have to create time for yourself, and this is where hard pushing is imperative. Notice how Rekkless uses his Q on as many minions as possible, and by shoving this wave quicker, he can get back in lane quicker. The slower you take, the less bright your future is going to be. This allows Rekkless to base, buy, and he's back in lane with the same gold spent as the enemy Kalista. And we're going to see the same pattern here. Kalista crashes a wave after being in lane for a while, so she can spend that gold. Does Rekkless want to be in lane an item behind? No. So he also shoves, creating time for his own recall. And this doesn't matter what champion you are playing. Put Rekkless on Vayne, exactly the same tactic. The enemy bot lane shoves and recalls, he shoves and recalls. Put him on Tristana. When the wave resets and he knows the enemy Syndra is based, he hard pushes. But sometimes, for sure, you won't be able to hard push quick enough, and this allows the enemy support to hold the wave outside the enemy tower, and this could potentially result in a freeze. This is the pits, so what you could do is exactly what Rekkless does. You can sneak through the lane brushes and ambush the enemy support, or you can just focus the enemy minions and clear these as quickly as possible. Now we're going to watch one more clip, and this is going to be like passing your driving test, but this is the wave management test. So I want you to tell Rekkless what he should do with this minion wave. Should he slow push or should he hard push? Hard pushing might still crash this stack of minions into the enemy tower, but it's risky, just because Ezreal might be able to hold it up and freeze it. An easy rule of thumb to abide by is to manage your minion waves according to this 60% line. So if the minion wave collision is before this line, you slow push. If it is past this line, you hard push. Because it's before, Rekkless slow pushes. So well done if you got that, but we are going to have to finish this sequence off. Our goal is to crash our pushing wave into the enemy tower. So when the collision point is now here, beyond the 60% line, what should Rekkless do? Slow push again, that's it. That was a test, by the way. He has to hard push, of course. Now there is zero chance of Ezreal and Leona freezing this wave, and by obeying the 60% line, the next wave coming into the bot lane bounces back to the middle, and this is ideal. As we see Leona jump on Rekkless, and it might look a bit scary, but again, look at the distance between Rekkless and the secondary target Ezreal. Leona has overextended that much just to jump on Rekkless, but does this really mean anything? No, because Ezreal is missing in action. So another clip showing you the importance of positioning. Now, if you want to know the importance of everything else on Summoner's Rift, make sure to head on over to the GameLeap website linked in the description and comments, because the Jizz and his fellow Challenger players and coaches are uploading a bunch of videos every week for our subscribers, and these are made exclusively by the best to help you be the best, so check it out, links down below. And I hope this video was helpful. Any questions, thoughts, leave them in the comments, and until tomorrow's upload, this has been the Jizz.